Hello, everyone. It is now 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Franco, and I'm pleased to be your host for today's session on our Midwifery Program. This session is one of many taking place as part of Ryerson's virtual open house, which is running this week, November 9th to 13th, and also next week, November 16th to 20th. I encourage you to visit our Ryerson at Home website and register for any other sessions that you might be interested in. Now, to begin, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the land Ryerson's campus stands on today, the place where we work and learn. Ryerson and Toronto are in the Dish with One Spoon territory. The Dish with One Spoon is a treaty between the Anishinaabe, Mississaugas, and Haudenosaunee that bound them to share the territory and protect the land. Subsequent Indigenous nations, peoples, Europeans, and all newcomers have been invited into this treaty in the spirit of peace, friendship, and respect. Now, here at Ryerson, equity, diversity, and inclusion is something that is very important to us, and we'll continue to work on the path toward reconciliation. Now, a quick update on our campus operations. Ryerson has shifted to an essential services model to help prevent the spread of the COVID-19 pandemic. We have put together a series of these virtual sessions in order to share information and connect with you, the applicant. Ryerson is working diligently to provide fulsome experiences to all of our students while still maintaining the health and safety of our community. Now, just in case this is the first time you are using Zoom, a couple tips to help you get most of your experience with us here today. We encourage you to ask questions. We have many faculty and staff members here on the back end ready to help you out. So if you have a question for us, you can submit those questions to us through the Q&A box, which you can find at the bottom of the Zoom window. So click on that, a new dialog box should open up, and that is where you can submit your question. If you are experiencing any audio or video issues, maybe you can't hear me really well right now, please also feel free to flag this in the Q&A, and one of our team members will be able to assist you with troubleshooting. You can also rearrange the screen however you see fit. So if you want to make the presentation screen bigger, you can do so. You may do so. If you want to see the presenter screen a little bit bigger, you can do that too. Whatever you do on your screen will not affect the viewing experience of others. And finally, we have also enabled closed captioning. So if you require closed captioning, you can also find that option available on the bottom of the Zoom window. And final note, all the recordings of our virtual open house sessions will be posted on our Ryerson at Home website after this event, so in a few weeks. So that's all from me. I'm now going to introduce to you Carleen, who is our director of our midwifery program, and she will go through all the information of the program and to share a little bit more about what that's like. And over to you, Carleen.
Thank you very much, Franco. It's my pleasure to be here today. I'm going to be sharing my screen in just a moment. I'm just going to be sharing some slides with you that just help us to understand a little bit more about the Ryerson Midwifery Education Program and how to apply and whether you should consider yourself a good candidate. We are looking for new midwives to join the group of midwives that are over 900 now that practice in Ontario, and then over 1,000 that practice across Canada. And some of our graduates have even gone on to practice in other parts of the world in global health arenas, or in the United States, in Germany, in the UK. And we're very grateful because they have gone on to represent Ryerson. So I'm Carleen Wilson-Mitchell. I'm the director of the program since 2018. This is my third year in this position, and our program has been around since 1993. We've just celebrated our 27th year. And I'm just gonna go ahead and introduce myself a little bit, tell you about midwifery, what the profession is and what it means in Canada, a review of our curriculum and how we deliver this unique model of midwifery. Midwifery is practiced all around the world in low, middle, and high income countries. Canada is the last industrialized country in the world to actually regulate and integrate midwifery into the healthcare system so that midwives are fairly paid and compensated for their work, and that we have privileges in the hospitals as other members of the healthcare team does. We'll talk about placements and why it's so important for us to focus on 50% of our curriculum being delivered in a clinical placement, the teaching methods we use, what Ontario midwifery practice is like, and we'll even ask one of our students who is currently in her senior placement, Izuri Haraf, to share with you what it's like to live the life of a midwifery student at Ryerson. You'll also get to know a lot more about the admission requirements. And I noticed that almost 90% of you today are planning to apply to university next year, and some are here because you want to prepare for 2 or more years in the future. And kudos to you for preparing and looking ahead. So first of all, I've been a midwife for the last 30 years. I've been in healthcare professions in general for the last 35 years. I happen to have had my training in the United States prior to the regulation of midwifery in Canada. And so I have some experience in both countries, and I can tell you about the benefits of being prepared as a Canadian midwife, direct entry at the bachelor's level, in which you have more accessibility. And we have a variety of different kinds of students in our program, and we're seeking to diversify even more. Our faculty is trying to represent some of the diversity that we see in the city of Toronto, a city with over 170 ethnic groups and languages spoken, and very racialized, in fact, over 51% racialized. Our faculty is comprised of a small group of professors, many of whom are still practicing midwives, so we remain current. Amongst those midwives, and then amongst those who are not midwives, of which there is one, we have social scientists, biological scientists, microbiologists, equity specialists, global health specialists, and Indigenous midwifery specialists. We're very proud to have hired the very first midwifery education professor who is an Indigenous midwife and practicing in an Indigenous model in Canada. And now we have a total of 2 Indigenous midwifery professors, one of South Asian diaspora and myself of the African diaspora. And we're excited about the way that all of our skills and experience blend so well together like a tapestry. Our faculty are all committed to clinical practice and the development of the profession and furthering midwifery research. So what is a midwife? A midwife is a registered healthcare professional, just as physicians, which may be family physicians, obstetricians, surgeons, maternal fetal medicine specialists. So they are all members of healthcare team, and they are registered by the government to be able to practice safely and provide the public with accountability. So we are amongst those registered healthcare professionals, just like social workers are, nutritionists and dietitians, a number of different cadre of healthcare workers. So we have our own college of midwifery, just like there's a college of physicians and surgeons, or there's a college of social work, or there's a college of occupational therapy, or a college of nurses. We have a college of midwifery that regulates and certifies us. The midwife in Canada, the model includes the care during pregnancy and up to about 6 to 8 weeks postpartum after the baby is born, both the care of the pregnant and birthing individual, as well as the newborn infant. Now, there are other parts of Canada where we have alternative practice arrangements and extended midwifery care models in which we do care with contraception, family planning, involved in circumcisions, and all kinds of other extended practice or advanced practice methods. But primarily, 95% of midwives across Canada give care to the birthing family. And we all act as advocates for their clients and families, just as midwives do all around the world in accordance to the International Confederation of Midwives. In our program, we try to make a difference by preparing you to be experts in your clinical skills, whether it's giving injections, learning how to suture or sew up lacerations, learning how to measure blood test results or gathering blood test results from the newborn or from the birthing person, and also being able to be an educator for your clients. And we consider them clients because we want to even the playing field. We realize we wield a lot of power with the knowledge we have as care providers, but we believe that the client and family deserve to share this knowledge. And so we have a very well-informed client base who can make well-informed decisions. It's an interprofessional relationship, so we teach students how to collaborate with the other team members, how to know what everybody's role is. We focus a lot of that in the 3rd year. And then we help you to somehow use the science and the art. It's both your head and your hearts and your hands that you use in the midwifery profession. Now, think about it. How many professions that are involved in the service industry, where you're providing a service to the public, that you can immediately graduate and have over 90% chance of having a $90,000 to $120,000 a year for your salary. And that's the range across, the most novice midwives who are in early career, up to those who have been in practice for 5 to 10 years. And so you are able to go to school and after 4 years, come up with a meaningful, livable wage. And so what we're finding is many of our applicants and many of the students in our program, in fact, have been in other programs before. They've got other bachelor's degrees, even masters or a couple of PhDs we've had as our students, but they were not able to be gainfully employed. Somehow being a midwife not only gave them a purpose and a way to use all of their skills and talents, but it compensated them so that they could pay their bills, feed their families, keep a roof over their heads, and grow in the profession. So it's not stagnant, it's very dynamic, and there is a real need for those midwives, many of you who are going to be future midwives, to serve your communities, your very diverse communities. I always believe that there is a family for every midwife, and there's a midwife for every family. Will that be you? So our curriculum is a Bachelor of Health Science. It is the application of science, and it is an application that is fair and equitable. So graduates are eligible to write for the registration exam. Last year, because of COVID, it changed everything in every program at Ryerson and across the world. And so we have had to do a lot of adaptation, but we were still able to graduate our class of students, and they are now practicing. Even though the paperwork at Ryerson says they are eligible to graduate, they haven't convocated yet because we've not been able to meet on campus to actually convocate. But their education was enough to allow them to start their new registrant year and start paying off their student loans because they're getting paid, which is great news. So we integrate clinical and academic learning, as I said before, and you have placements with midwives, with obstetricians, family physicians, nurses, lactation specialists, who are specialists in infant feeding, so that you too can learn some of those same skills. We have a lot of overlap in our skill sets as maternity care providers in Ontario. So yes, probably nurses, physicians, as well as midwives can draw blood, can take a blood pressure. Midwives are considered the specialists and the experts in infant feeding and normal physiological birth. In fact, we get a lot of referrals from family doctors and obstetricians who believe that we are best able to meet the complex and complicated social and physiological needs of the clients. And so sometimes we get a referral so that we're invited to join the healthcare team. We have limited enrollment sizes in our classes. The enrollment of about 35 to 37 every year allows us to be able to have 30 people in second year who will join in the placements. Do you see yourself in this science lab? Many people think, wow, it's been about 3 or 4 years since I took my high school chemistry, and I don't know if I remember all my anatomy and physiology. Well, we'll help you to remember. So even if you're feeling like I've got a strong degree in humanities, I really don't know the sciences as well, we'll get you up to speed. If in fact the opposite is true and you have a strong background in the sciences and you're not quite sure about the social sciences or what is politically correct, what is the respectful way to engage in communication and education, and what does advocacy mean? Well, all of those definitions, you'll get to know them, and you learn with, from, and about each other as students mingle with each other and share the learning. So you'll have some social sciences in the first year and a half. Many of them are liberal arts courses. Social justice and midwifery, introduction in midwifery, Aboriginal childbearing, and critical appraisal of research literature are many of the things that you begin to learn how to, advocate for your clients using those sciences. Critical appraisal of research sort of balances on both sides, because you'll also look at clinical trials and some of the biomedical research that has come out by both physicians, midwives, physiologists, all kinds of pharmacological research. You'll get a chance to look at that with a critical eye, and the biological sciences, anatomy and physiology. Some of you will have had transfer credit and you've already taken these courses, and you'll show us your transcript and your course outlines, and we'll be able to give you, you know, advanced standing for those. But reproductive physiology, pharmacology, life sciences, which is including microbiology, might be included. You have 4 semesters of midwifery placements starting in the second half of your second year, and you work alongside a preceptor, very much like the apprenticeship model, and you're learning with that instructor. And Fridays will be your academic day to be in class, which is online. We use Zoom, and you'll be used to using Zoom because you're using it today. In the third year, we have the interprofessional placements where you go and work with other members of the healthcare team. You return in third and fourth year for the complications and consultations, maternal newborn pathology, and clerkship, which is increasing your responsibility each year and increasing and building on previous knowledge in a spiral learning type of way. We have 8 geographical regions across the Greater Toronto Area. Since 2015, Ryerson, McMaster, and Laurentian universities, which are all given the responsibility by the Ministry of Colleges and Universities to deliver the Ontario Midwifery Program, we all have our own geographical areas now, which makes it easier for us to communicate with us, easier for you to know what to expect in the practice, because we have strong relationships in the Greater Toronto Area and all of the diversity that those kinds of placements can bring. So from the west to the east, north to the south, these are all the regions, and within each region there may be 2 or 3 different practices to make a complement of about 39 practices across the city, including the Toronto Birth Centre, which is an Indigenous-led birth centre. We're in the heart of downtown Toronto, so we have access to places like Women's Health and Women's Hands, like St. Michael's special clinic, in which a midwife, Jane McGilvery, works with HIV positive clients and other high risk, complicated clients. We have the option of being in the Toronto Birth Centre, and just all of the different diverse areas, a match clinic with the Riverdale Community Health Centre, and so on. We have a part-time stream, which is the 5 years. The first 2 years, you might want to slow down and take it easy, as you maybe are working part-time, you have a family, and it prepares you for when you'll be full-time in the clinical portion of the program. So some people stretch out the first 2 years of the program, so it may last you 2, 3, 4 years. We have a rule that we've sort of been flexible with because of COVID, in which by the time you start your clinical placement, we built in an accommodation so that to finish the 2-year portion of clinical placement, you have up to 4 years, and there's flexibility because of medical leave and things like that, and COVID. We would like to encourage everyone to finish the program within 7 years, so that everything you learned in the first year, you still remember by the 7th year, just so that you remain safe and current, and we're doing you a favor by giving you a stepwise progression. We have 3 hours per week on Fridays, as I mentioned, for clinical teaching, and we use problem-based learning or case-based learning, where you get a story, you pick out the information, just like the scientific method you learned in your biology labs or your chemistry labs. You pick up information, you do the data gathering like Sherlock Holmes, and then you try to figure out what the diagnosis is, and then the plan of how to fix it. And you know, these kinds of papers and doing objective simulations of clinical experiences are called OSCEs, where we watch you go through a demonstration of a skill, such as helping someone to feed their infant, managing a postpartum hemorrhage where someone is bleeding too heavily after the placenta is delivered. There might be 8 to 12 students in a group where you're doing a sort of seminar, and so you get to learn with and from each other while you present about how you would manage the case, because there's more than one right way, as long as you give a healthy, good rationale that has scientific basis to it and does more good and less harm. And this is all done remotely by Zoom, as I mentioned, on computer. So whether you're in your pajamas and you've just finished a very busy night of studying, or you know, you were delivering babies all week, and then from Thursday at 5 p.m. until Friday at 5 p.m., you have an academic day to focus on schoolwork, assignments, preparing for these tutorial groups, and sleeping, maybe going for a dentist appointment, those kinds of things. So just as you know, I was saying, I've just put this in a graphic form. The first year and a half is all in white. It's in the classroom in a regular 4-year curriculum. And then the second half of the second year, you start all the orange, which is all of the clinical courses. And then you graduate in the summer or the spring, late spring of your 4th year. You are prepared to write the national certification exam and hopefully can start a position either that summer or that fall. For those who are part-time, it's stretched out a little bit more. We no longer have the 6-year stream. We only have the 5-year stream, so apologies for putting the 2 things up there. But as I said, we have become very flexible during COVID. We have a 2-year accelerated program for those who have actually been labor and delivery nurses in the past. They already have a Bachelor of Science in Nursing, and so a lot of the anatomy and physiology, pharmacology, they already know that, the microbiology, we're just applying it to midwifery. So we compact their program into 2 years. All of the orange highlights are the same clinical courses, just in a little bit of a different order, that's all. And then the courses that are specific to midwifery that are preclinical are primarily done in the 1st year. Preclinical preceptor program is, or the clinical preceptor program is our way of having trained midwives who are also trained in teaching you. And we have Elizabeth Brandeis, our former president of the Association of Ontario Midwives on the left here, teaching students in one of our clinical experience classes how to catch a baby. And they're going through the maneuvers there, the 2 students in the center and on the right. And so we have 70 different clinical practices across Ontario, about 30 or so of them across you know, the Greater Toronto area. And students have access to a whole range of professionals. This was just updated this year, and you know, we probably have even more midwives than 1,690. I just graduated 20 of them, so we have, you know, about 20 graduates added to that in Ontario. So now we're closer to 900 in Ontario. And we, some of our students have taken up strong leadership roles in many of our leadership organizations, like the National Aboriginal Council of Midwives, the College of Midwives of Ontario, the Canadian Association of Midwives, the Society of Obstetricians and Gynecologists. We have some midwifery members there. And we've had a total of 146,659 births overall per year that our midwives catch those babies. About 16% of the babies that are born in Ontario are caught by midwives and students, midwifery students. We're funded by the Ministry of Health. Now it's the Ministry of Health and not long-term care. That's a separate branch now. And just as physicians are funded, each time they give care, they get money to reimburse them from the government. We too, as midwives, bill the government for the care that we give. So in a roundabout way, we are entrepreneurs. We are self-directed solo entrepreneurs. We run our own businesses. And you learn about the business of midwifery as well. We work in groups most often. Very few of us work solo. We work in anywhere from groups of 2 to 15 midwives. And we work sometimes in a clinic that is a freestanding clinic, or we may partner with a community health center and rent space from them. And it makes it easier for us to refer to some of their services, like nutritionists and social workers and so on. 3 major tenets that make us unique when you compare us to midwives around the world is continuity of care provider. So the same person who's been looking after this client throughout the pregnancy is one of the same 4 people who will attend the birth. So we try not to make it more than 4 new people that someone gets to meet. So this person knows them well at the birth, and they can know and trust the person who's caring for them and their baby. We like the clients and family to participate in the decision-making. We try to avoid this paternalistic, we know what's best. We know that you know yourself, your body, your family, and we learn to respect that you need things a certain way, and we advocate for you and support you. We'll always try to give you the best information to make the best choices and the implications and risks involved, and we support you. Choice of birthplace is also one of the decisions you can make, whether it's home, hospital, or a birth center. We are the only healthcare providers in Ontario to be legislated and allowed to plan out of hospital births. And that's why we are the specialists in that. The government pays us to have a certain number of our births out of the hospital because that's what our clients want. In fact, we have to explain to the government if we don't have enough home or birth center births. So this is one of my classes in the past that graduated last year, actually. Do you see yourself in this class? Do you see yourself in university within the next 4 years? This could be you. Nationally, we've produced a lot of amazing graduates over the last 27 years, and over 400 from Ryerson, 1,050 from all 3 sites in Ontario. We have a beautiful new building, the Daphne Cockwell Health Complex, where we have clinical education suites. It's very well equipped. I wanted to give the floor to my my colleague, and I'm not sure, there he is here, which is wonderful. I'm going to let her go ahead and take the floor right now and just tell you what her life is like as a senior midwifery student in 3rd year.
Thanks, Carlene. So hi, everyone. I am a senior student right now, as Carlene said. I'm doing my 4th year at East Mississauga Midwives. And I am currently in my 2nd semester, so the placement is called Maternal Neonatal Pathology. Thanks so much for having me to talk to you guys today. I just wanted to sort of give you an overview of what a day in the life of a senior student is like, with the caveat that not every day is this busy, but I tried to pick a day from the last few weeks where I've had like a good range of experiences. So as a senior student, you are working with your preceptors. They are the midwives who are sort of your mentors as you're completing your placement. Part of what is different about senior year is that you have a lot more responsibility. You're starting to work more independently. You still have your preceptors there. They act as a little bit more of a safety net, and you're the one who's more in charge of the primary decision-making and the clinical management. So an example of a day that I've had over the last few weeks, I wake up in the morning and go to clinic. The clinic that I work at, I mentioned, is East Mississauga Midwives, so it is a freestanding clinic. We're not associated with like a community health center. And right now, because of COVID, we have fewer clients coming in, but we are still doing clinic visits, and that often involves doing like a physical check-in with someone, so taking their blood pressure, sometimes their weight, listening to their baby, measuring their symphysis fundal height, so like the size of their stomach, basically. And then also talking to them about whatever decisions are coming up in their pregnancy, if they want to do a screen for gestational diabetes, or if they're interested in swabbing for group B strep later on. It's totally fine if you guys don't know anything about what those are. That part will come later. And yeah, as a senior student, you get to mostly run your own clinic visits. So I often start with the client and then have the midwife come in for like the last few minutes just to check in. And so that's really satisfying. It does involve a lot of like time management. You need to be able to organize yourself so that you can complete your clinic day on time, because you have clients coming in the waiting room who are waiting to be seen. So that's a pretty important part, but it's very satisfying. And that day I had clinic just for the morning. And then around noon, as I was finishing up, I got paged to be a backup at the hospital. So what that means is just that as a midwife, you're on call. So my pager is my cell phone for this placement. And I got called by a midwife who was at the hospital and about to have a delivery. And in Ontario, at every birth, you have to have 2 midwives present. And so as a senior student, one of the kind of cool things that you get to do is in your 2nd semester, you get to start attending those births by yourself as a backup in your 2nd semester. So that meant that I went to the hospital by myself and went in, and with that other midwife, we delivered that baby, which was really cool. And at that particular birth, I think there was a little bit of a postpartum hemorrhage. So another part of being stepping a little bit more into the primary role is that you're starting to manage emergencies without as much assistance. So it was a small hemorrhage. We got it under control, but it is really nice to be able to suddenly have that responsibility and be able to be challenged in that way. It's a little scary too, for sure, but you get a lot of support from the program as well as your preceptors. And then, yeah, in terms of getting to work with midwives, you learn a lot. And what's nice about doing, for example, backups on your own is that you're getting to work with midwives other than just your preceptors. Everyone practices in a slightly different way, and a lot of the learning that you get from placements is just following different clinicians, whether that's midwives or obstetricians or nurses, and seeing how different people approach situations and manage care. Then after the backup, that was about 3 hours. So now we're looking at maybe 3 or 4 p.m. I had a home visit to do with a client. So a home visit is basically in the postpartum after the baby is born. We often follow up with people at home, as Carleen mentioned. So this was a day 5 visit. And as a student in maternal neonatal pathology, I'm allowed to do that visit by myself. So, so this was 5 days after the birth. I went to their house. They had already been seen on day 1 and day 3. And so I was just seeing them again on day 5 to assess how the feeding was going with the baby and provide breastfeeding support. I think I remember with that particular client, she was concerned about her milk supply. She felt that it wasn't coming in well enough, and I was able to work with her to come up with a plan to increase her milk supply. And then after each home visit, I always call my preceptors to check in about how the visit went and if there were any things that I felt were out of my realm or that I needed assistance with. And so, yeah, that was, I mean, it was pretty smooth, and I was able to go home and be home by around, I think, 5 p.m. that day, and make dinner and relax. And then after dinner, I was paged again. And this time I was paged by someone who I had delivered the day before. So I was the primary midwife in that case. I had cared for her throughout pregnancy and delivered the baby, and she was in the hospital, and she just called me to let me know that she was going home from the hospital, so that we could make a plan about going to go see her on day 1. And she also wanted to know if she should be giving the baby some formula. And so I was able to sort of talk her through that decision and give her the information she needed about that. So that's sort of like, it was a busy-ish day. Some days are busier than others. I think like yesterday I did 2 back-to-back deliveries, so that was a busier day, but I also had like a very lovely weekend where I was able to have like a picnic and still be on call, but go and sit outside for a while. So there's like a lot of range in what my days look like, but that's what I really like about this program and about the profession. I like that, as Carleen said, there's like a really good mix of clinical skills and social skills and hard science skills, research, and being able to like write clinical papers, for example, but also doing hands-on breastfeeding support. So yeah, that's just sort of like a description of what a day can look like in your senior year. Yeah, Carleen, if there's anything you want me to add, feel free to ask, but otherwise I think I'm done.
Thank you so much, Azuri. I am just so excited that I get a chance to have you in my clerkship class coming up in January. Azuri is an amazing student who has had so many other life experiences before coming to midwifery, and it's a great segue into answering some of the questions that I just got in the Q&A. What if you are a mature student, you've done other university courses? That's great. You can use some of those university courses as your transfer credit. Life experience is very important to us, so we noticed that in the last 27 years, there have been only 2 students who have ever come straight from high school and actually were successful in our program. By and large, they usually do not have all the experience needed to answer the questions in the MMI. That's the multiple mini interview. So even having 1 or 2 years of experience working in the working world, whether it's as a waitress, as working as a barista at Starbucks or something like that, it gives you valuable life experience, problem solving, maturity, ability to manage time, manage challenges. All of those are very important skills. So some of us might not have had the opportunity to go to do another university degree. Some of us have. Some of us have had the opportunity to travel or volunteer with QSO. All of those things are great, but there are many ways of obtaining those same skills and maturity. And you need to be able to draw on all of those experiences and find out what kind of skills will help me as a midwife and help me to do what Izuri just described in my typical day, where yes, I get interruptions. Yes, I have to make decisions. Yes, I have to remember all the things that I was taught in class or that I read in a textbook or a journal article, and then apply them to this particular situation. Yes, I have to take all of what I'm learning from my preceptor, the midwife who I'm following, and then try to remember what I learned in the classroom and somehow make sense of it. So any of those skills can be learned over time. So thank you so much, Izuri. I wanted to address any other questions, but many of the questions I noticed have been about how do I apply and you know, what are the next steps? What kind of things should I be prepared for? And what should I look for on the website? How do I do the paperwork? Yes, we do a multi-mini interview. Instead of doing it in person, we're doing it with Kira Talent, which is an online system that allows you, you just need to have a webcam and a functioning computer that has enough Wi-Fi band and be able to not be interrupted. It's just going to be you in a room talking to a video recording of someone asking you a question and then you recording your answer. And it's timed, so you don't have a lot of time to go away and come back. You're supposed to do it yourself, not consult with anybody else. You're just supposed to use that 4 minutes or 5 minutes they give you to speak into your microphone. So that's what you can expect. There are all sorts of videos on YouTube that will teach you how to interview, best practices, how to dress, how to say things, you know, what certain words mean. So certainly you can go to that. So I'm going to stop sharing right now and just segue into, I think, Nicole Riley continuing to answer questions and also addressing some of the how-to about the application process.
Hi, everybody. So as Carly mentioned, today I'll kind of go through the application process for you, hopefully to simplify it, because I know sometimes there's a lot of websites and it's not always clear where to start. So hopefully I can give you some of those tools today, as well as answer some of the kind of common questions that we see popping up in the Q&A. So I'm just going to share my screen very quickly and then we can get started here. Just want to make sure, is everyone able to see that? I'm not sure, Franco, everyone good?
Yes, Nicole, you're good. You're good. Yeah,
perfect. Okay. So all of the information that you're going to need throughout the application process can really be found on the Midwifery website. So the one thing to write down after today, if you need anything, is ryerson.ca/midwifery. This is the best place to start because it's going to give you information on kind of your specific background. On this website, where you want to go is the admissions area. You can honestly just click on the word admissions and it'll take you where you need to be. So as Carlene kind of already mentioned, here are the admissions requirements for the program. It is at the high school level. At the minimum, we require certain high school subject prerequisites. So those are, here it mentions the Ontario ones. I know everyone's coming from different backgrounds. Just generally speaking, it's a senior level English. So usually that's kind of grade 12. So senior level English, biology, chemistry, and a humanities social science course. So 4 prerequisites for our program. Because of the competition for this program in the past, we usually encourage applicants to have a 75% or higher in these subject prerequisites, as well as encourage them to have a 75% or higher in their high school average. The high school average is calculated differently based on where everyone went to school. In Ontario, which might be the majority of you, that's based on your top 6 grade 12 URM courses, but it is different for every education system. And I'll absolutely be able to provide, if anyone's coming from a specific education system, let us know in the Q&A at the bottom, and I can provide you with the website where it lets you know your equivalents. So those are the requirements that everybody needs, these high school requirements. And then on this page, it goes into specifics about your background. So as you can see here, it lists kind of our most common applicants, and you can kind of just choose the one that you think fits best with you. They all pretty much bring you to the same forms that you need. So there's no right or wrong answer, just choose the one that fits best for you. So let's just take, for example, that I attended or am attending university or college. Once you click on kind of your best fit situation, it's going to bring you to all the requirements you need in order to apply and all the forms you need. So kind of goes over the information you need before you apply. One thing that's very important, you must be a Canadian citizen or permanent resident or protected person, convention refugee, or in the process of getting your residency status in order to be eligible for this program. So that's one big one. Another big one is the deadline to apply is February 1st. And that's also the deadline that we recommend getting in all of your documents. And when I'm saying documents, I mean your transcripts, as well as some of these supporting documents that I'm going to mention a bit later on. For midwifery, it's a pretty hard cutoff. The application closes after February 1st. So you need to get the application in by that deadline date. And then it goes into the different requirements for here, specifically university and college students. Because we see so many applicants coming in with post-secondary studies, we have written in some recommendations of grades for these students. Usually we recommend that students apply with an average around 75%. I know that we have some students who completely finished a degree, so 4 years, and they're worried because they might not have that 75. We mentioned some other kind of options down here. Competition changes every year, so if you at least have a year's worth of post-secondary education, so kind of 10 courses in that 75% range, we still encourage you to apply. As I said, competition changes every year. We're kind of just taking the top applicants. What was required last year might be different this year. So if you meet those minimums, if you meet those high school requirements, and if you have at least a year's worth of post-secondary studies in the 75% range, we encourage you to apply. Other than transcripts, which everyone, after they apply, they can submit on what's called their Choose Ryerson portal, so everything done online. The only other documents that midwifery students will need this year are the ones found here. So under supporting documents, we've moved away from having a midwifery specific supplementary form. I know that this is something that we've required in the past, but starting this year, the midwifery program is going to use the general supplementary form that all other Ryerson programs use. This form, you don't have to go searching for it. It's going to be on your Choose Ryerson portal. If you're a current Ontario high school student, you do not have to complete this form. The primary purpose of this form is for you guys as applicants to let us know where your prerequisite subjects are coming from. So that's the most important part of this form. For Ontario high school students, your schools already do this, which is why we're not making you fill out the form. Other than the supplementary form for select students, applicants do get the option to fill out a voluntary self-ID. And this, the link to this form is found just under the supporting documents area here. And there's a link that brings you to the form to complete. You can complete it on your computers, or you can print it out and write it by hand, doesn't matter. And this form, there's also going to be an upload space in your Choose Ryerson portal for you to submit it. The instructions can be found down here. So once you get access to your portal, you're going to see a little upload space, and that's where you could submit this this form. So after you've applied, you've handed in all of your transcripts and all of your supporting documents if you wanted to. That self-ID is voluntary. Then we go ahead and we start reviewing your applications. And around March time, we start to let students know whether or not they've been invited to interview. And then, yeah, interviews, it kind of goes into more information here. And I know Carlene touched upon that, but interviews happen in April time. And then, yeah, we go from there. I hope this website and kind of going through it in person helps to better visualize the application process and helps to explain the admissions requirements a bit more. But I'd still be happy. I know that there's still some Q&As coming through. I'd be happy to answer some more questions there or in person if need be. But that's kind of the gist of the admission side. So I'll pass it back to you, Franco, for now and stop sharing my screen.
I noticed that there's a lot of questions in the chat about how much weight we give to previous experience. And one of the questions was, suppose the previous university experience is at Ryerson, and I'm currently a student enrolled in another program at Ryerson. You know, how much do I need to submit? You already have my high school transcripts. Do I need to submit them again?
Yes, current Ryerson students, current or past Ryerson students, we already have your high school and we have your Ryerson transcript. So you do not need to submit those to us. That's just for other schools. If you're applying on an application where you're applying to, let's say, our midwifery program in McMaster, that's when you want to give them the other transcripts that I think you can order all of them through the OUAC. But Ryerson personally, we don't need your high school and we don't need your Ryerson transcript because we have them on file. But if you applied to Ryerson, I just want to clarify, if you applied to Ryerson in the past and you didn't become a Ryerson student, you're going to need to hand in your high school transcript again and whatever post-secondary school you have taken that we might not have on file to review.
I'm not sure whether you can see some of these other questions that are coming up, Nicole, in the Q&A. I'm trying to answer many of them, but we still have quite a few, and I just want to make use of the next 10 minutes.
Absolutely. Franco, I'm not sure. Are there some that you think are best for me to answer live?
I think I can come on and maybe feed some questions over to you. So we mentioned in the presentation that many of our applicants already have some type of post-secondary experience and they've completed courses elsewhere. So when it comes down to the admissions process, some of the questions are about kind of how are the grades weighted? Is it more weighted on your accomplishments in high school? Is it your college or university? I was wondering if you can touch upon that.
Yeah, absolutely. So it really is a holistic process for this program. We're absolutely going to try to evaluate students in the way that most benefits them. I know we have a lot of applicants who are worried that maybe their high school average wasn't the strongest, but then they came into their own in post-secondary studies. In that case, we're absolutely going to take that into consideration and kind of consider that their most recent studies at the post-secondary level was stronger. If it's the opposite way, if someone's very happy about their high school average and are worried about maybe their post-secondary, they still meet that minimum kind of 75 in at least a year, but they're still kind of worried about that. You have the opportunity to provide us with context throughout the application process. There's, for those who are able to submit the supplementary form, there's a section on the supplementary form where it says, is there anything that you want us to know about your studies? Absolutely feel free to write it there. For 101, OUAC 101 students who are current Ontario high school students, who don't have the supplementary form, there's what's called a special consideration form that you can find on our website where you can provide that same information if that's something that interests you as well. So as for how much it's weighted, it depends on competition every year. We're taking a look at the entire applicant pool and trying to see who holistically are the strongest students and going from there. So it does change every year.
Thank you. Another question, I don't, maybe Carlene might be able to answer this as well. With, of course, the current global situation, COVID-19, what is the mix of online and in-person classes happening right now? What does that look like?
Right now, we're taking all of our courses by Zoom. There are special parts of our course that cannot be done on Zoom. We do as much simulation as we can, but the things that must be done in person, we get special permission from the university. We're using PPE, following the best environmental health practices and social distancing appropriately. So just as you would handle clients in a hospital, we're actually handling students the same way with PPE, masks, and so on. When we do our simulations, we're working with models. Instead of seeing someone working with that model that you saw in that photograph, you might see someone working with the model, but they have their mask, their hat, their gloves, their gown on. So it's more preparation, but it's what we need to protect our students. And it's working. It's keeping our students safe.
Awesome, thank you. So I hope that answers the question from our guest who submitted that type of question. And I guess I'm just looking through the Q&A right now. This is actually a question that so to get a context, I also meet a lot of students on the road. And this is a question I get from some students who are wondering, is there an age limit on who can apply to the program? If we can touch upon that, maybe.
There's no age limit. In fact, my oldest student was 55 years old. She had already worked as a physiotherapy for many years, got her kids off to college. They were out of the nest, so she could finally focus on herself. And she always had a dream to be a midwife. So at 55 years old, she enrolled. Even though she had gone to university many, many, many years before, we still accepted her grades, whatever transfer credit she needed. And she's now practicing as a very competent midwife in Scarborough. And I would be proud to have any one of my grandbabies delivered in her hands.
Awesome, thank you, Carlene. Nicole, I see you also have a question you also want to address.
Yes, so I often get questions. We have students who have gone on to complete kind of post-secondary studies, and if they hadn't met the high school requirements, they often ask us if we can take a post-secondary equivalent. We may be able to, but we can only determine whether or not it's equivalent once we receive the application. So that always kind of causes some issues because there's no guarantee that we'll be able to take it as equivalent. So if you want to ensure that when you're applying, you meet those requirements, we do usually always recommend that you have the high school requirements when applying, especially for the science courses. We do see a lot of applicants applying with kind of college courses that are great. And even though they're at the college level or the university level, once you get to the post-secondary, it does become very specific. The biology and the chemistry courses, and it doesn't necessarily cover the breadth of the high school level. So we always encourage students, if you're not meeting the high school requirements, especially for those sciences, we recommend upgrading at the high school level.
Awesome. Thanks. We just have a few more minutes left, but there is some. Just looking at kind of the results we got from our poll earlier. I understand a lot of our guests here are current high school students. So Carlene, I was wondering if you can give some advice, and because I've seen some questions asking like, oh, I heard that you don't take a lot of high school students directly from grade 12. So any advice for these applicants that you can give?
It doesn't hurt to apply. The practice of applying is good practice. But don't be disappointed if it takes you 2, 3, 4, 5 times of applying year after year. Don't give up. The practice is worth it. I remembered people interviewing 2 or 3 years, and finally the 3rd year, everything came together and they got in and they were successful in the program. So I just want to prepare you. I don't want you to be disappointed. It doesn't mean that you cannot be a midwife. Just keep trying. It does cost some money to apply, yes. It does mean you have to sort of, you're waiting on the edge and sort of wondering, when is it going to happen? Yes. But that makes you all the more eager and you really want this. So the people who end up hanging in there and apply over and over again, they find that they're actually stronger applicants by the time they get in.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Carlene. So we just have about 5 more minutes before this session wraps up. So I wanted to provide, Carlene, maybe an opportunity for you to also maybe say a couple final things before we wrap up this session.
Yes, thank you so much, Franco, and thank you for the whole team. Thank you, Danny and Faculty of Community Services. You have all helped us to really, showcase our program. I just wanted to let you know that the Ontario Midwifery Program, all 3 sites you can apply at the same time. Before you could only apply at one university at a time. Now you can apply at both Ryerson, Laurentian, and McMaster universities in the midwifery programs. And I guess the best university for you will win. And we have about 350 or so graduates who apply every year for 36, 37 spaces. We have sometimes between 1 and 5 registered nurses with labor and delivery experience applying per year. And we have, on average, admitted 1 or 2 registered nurses. We like to admit 2 so that they encourage each other, because they have a very complex, concentrated program and they have to work so hard. It's best to have a buddy, to have as a studying buddy. So I look forward to getting to meet all of you at some time. You sound eager. There are many people who come because they've been a client, they've had their baby born with a midwife, or because they had a friend or did some reading, or they're very concerned about social justice and they like the style and the model of midwifery. They've met some very kind professionals, but they found that the chance of meeting a professional who's going to treat them with respect and dignity, spend 45 minutes at a visit instead of 5 minutes at a visit, is much higher as a midwife. And that's the kind of provider they want to be. So if it's for you, we would love to welcome you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Carlene. And at this moment, I'd like to thank everyone who presented, so Carlene and Nicole, for joining us today and sharing their knowledge and experiences with our guests today. Oh, and also Izuri, our student who was on earlier as well. So now we're going to be shutting down our audio and video, but we will still be online until the end of the hour to answer any more questions that you have. So please feel free to continue submitting those through the Q&A box. I also encourage you to also make a note of any answers that you also received, because once I end this webinar, the record of that answer will be gone. So I encourage you to make a note of those too. So on behalf of Ryerson University and everyone here, thank you once again for joining us today. And we hope to see you in other sessions later in our open house event. So take care, everyone.